July 31st, 2024, 6:45 a.m. Marine Corps Air Station New River, North Carolina. After 10 years of delays and $31 billion in taxpayer money, the most powerful helicopter in American history finally roared to life for its first operational mission. The CH-53K King Stallion, a $138 million flying monster capable of lifting 36,000 pounds, 3 times more than any predecessor, just became operational while China watches every move. 22,500 shaft horsepower, 110-foot rotor diameter, digital fly-by-wire controls never seen on heavy-lift aircraft. 200 Marines from Heavy Helicopter Squadron 461 spent a decade waiting for this moment. But why did the Pentagon's most advanced helicopter take 10 years longer than planned? And what does this mean for the Indo-Pacific showdown that's coming? The answer reveals why America's military modernization is both terrifying and vulnerable. March 2019, a CH-53E Super Stallion, the Marine Corps' workhorse heavy-lift helicopter, crashes in California during a training mission, killing 4 Marines. The aircraft was 35 years old. Investigators discover catastrophic metal fatigue, corroded hydraulic lines, and maintenance records showing the airframe had exceeded its operational lifespan by 8,000 flight hours. This wasn't an isolated incident. By 2020, the Marine Corps' fleet of 147 CH-53E Super Stallions averaged 42 years old, ancient by aviation standards. Maintenance crews reported needing 44 maintenance hours for every single flight hour. Parts had to be cannibalized from other helicopters just to keep half the fleet airborne. The operational readiness rate plummeted to 29%, meaning only 43 helicopters were mission capable at any given moment. The strategic implications were catastrophic. The Marine Corps' entire amphibious assault doctrine depends on heavy-lift helicopters. Without them, Marines can't move 155mm howitzers from ships to shore. They can't transport JLTV armored vehicles to forward operating bases. They can't conduct mass casualty evacuations under fire. The CH-53E fleet was literally falling apart while tensions with China escalated across the Taiwan Strait and South China Sea. Pentagon planners knew the replacement timeline was critical. The CH-53K King Stallion program launched in 2006 with a clear mission: deliver 200 next-generation heavy-lift helicopters by 2015, each capable of triple the payload capacity. The Marines needed these aircraft operational before the CH-53E fleet became completely unflyable. Then everything went wrong. The first CH-53K prototype achieved its initial flight on October 27, 2015, already behind schedule. But that first flight exposed fundamental problems. The 3 GE 38-1B engines, each producing 7,500 shaft horsepower, generated excessive heat that damaged surrounding components. The digital fly-by-wire system, revolutionary for heavy-lift helicopters, experienced software glitches that caused uncommanded control inputs during hover operations. The transmission, designed to handle unprecedented torque loads, developed harmonic vibrations that threatened structural integrity. Sikorsky engineers went back to the drawing board. Each fix created cascade effects requiring additional testing. The engine cooling issues took 3 years to resolve, requiring redesigned air intake systems and heat-resistant materials. The fly-by-wire software needed 47 separate updates before achieving certification standards. The transmission underwent complete redesign twice. By 2020, the program was 5 years behind schedule and $6 billion over budget. The original $25 billion program cost had ballooned to $31 billion. Each helicopter's unit cost increased from $95 million to $138 million. Critics in Congress demanded accountability, while Marines continued flying helicopters older than most pilots. Subscribe to see how this engineering nightmare became America's most powerful helicopter and why China fears what comes next. But the Pentagon had no choice. The CH-53E fleet was dying, and there was no alternative. When the CH-53K King Stallion finally achieved production approval in May 2022, it represented the most significant technological leap in heavy-lift aviation since the 1960s. The specifications weren't just impressive, they redefined what rotary wing aircraft could accomplish. The three GE 38-1B engines produce a combined 22,500 shaft horsepower, more than any helicopter in U.S. military history. The 110-foot diameter main rotor, wider than the wingspan of an F-16 fighter jet, generates lift capacity of 36,000 pounds external load. That's enough to carry 3 fully loaded JLTV armored vehicles simultaneously, or 2 155mm M777 howitzers with ammunition pallets, or 55 combat-loaded Marines with full gear. But raw power was only part of the revolution. The CH-53K became the first heavy-lift helicopter with full fly-by-wire flight controls. Instead of mechanical linkages connecting pilot controls to rotor systems, digital computers interpret pilot inputs and adjust blade angles thousands of times per second. This provides unprecedented stability in hover operations, critical when inserting Marines onto ships swaying in rough seas or extracting casualties from confined landing zones under fire. The digital cockpit transformed crew operations. Pilots interact with touchscreen displays, showing real-time aircraft health monitoring, mission planning overlays, and threat warnings. The system automatically detects component degradation before failures occur, reducing unexpected maintenance by 60% compared to the CH-53E. Flight engineers can monitor all critical systems from integrated displays instead of scanning dozens of analog gauges. The structural improvements solved decades-old problems. The CH-53E's aluminum airframe suffered constant cracking from vibration fatigue. The CH-53K uses composite materials in critical stress areas, reducing weight while increasing durability. The main rotor blades incorporate elastomeric bearings that dampen vibrations, extending component lifespan from 2,500 hours to 10,000 hours. The landing gear can absorb impacts 40% harder than previous designs, critical for shipboard operations in heavy seas. Range capabilities expanded operational flexibility. The CH-53E had an effective combat radius of 290 nautical miles with maximum payload. The CH-53K extends that to 460 nautical miles, enabling ship-to-shore operations from carriers positioned farther offshore, beyond range of enemy anti-ship missiles. The defensive systems incorporated lessons from 20 years of combat. Advanced missile warning sensors detect incoming threats 40% faster than legacy systems. Countermeasure dispensers carry double the chaff and flare capacity. The infrared signature reduction features make heat-seeking missiles 60% less effective. All critical flight systems have triple redundancy. If 2 systems fail, the third maintains flight capability. By 2023, the CH-53K had passed every certification test. The Marines had their replacement helicopter, but getting it from test facilities to operational squadrons revealed the program's most controversial problem. Nobody knew how to fly it properly. January 2024. Marine Heavy Helicopter Squadron 461 at New River Air Station received its first operational CH-53K helicopters. The crews, experienced pilots with thousands of hours in CH-53ES, discovered that nothing transferred directly to the new platform. The digital flight controls responded differently. The increased power required completely different hover techniques. The automated systems intervened in ways pilots didn't anticipate. The transition training program became a bottleneck nobody predicted. Each pilot required 120 flight hours in the CH-53K before achieving basic qualification compared to 60 hours for CH-53E transitions. The simulators couldn't fully replicate the aircraft's handling characteristics, forcing more expensive actual flight training. With only 8 CH-53Ks available to Squadron 461, scheduling conflicts delayed pilot progression. Maintenance crews faced steeper challenges. The CH-53E's mechanical systems could be troubleshot with basic tools and visual inspection. The CH-53K's digital architecture required specialized diagnostic equipment and software training. Maintenance personnel needed 6 months of additional schooling to understand the health monitoring systems, fly-by-wire troubleshooting, and composite repair techniques. The Marine Corps discovered they had helicopters but insufficient trained maintainers to keep them flying. Supply chain problems emerged immediately. The CH-53K used entirely new components with no existing inventory. When parts failed during training operations, squadrons waited weeks for replacements while aircraft sat grounded. The Pentagon's logistics system, designed for legacy aircraft with decades of established supply networks, struggled to support a brand new platform with limited production runs. Operational testing revealed unexpected limitations. The advanced electronics performed flawlessly in controlled environments, but experienced interference near certain radar systems. The increased rotor diameter, essential for lift capacity, created ground handling problems on older ships designed for smaller helicopters. The fly-by-wire system required software updates that could only be installed at specialized maintenance facilities, not in forward-deployed locations. But Squadron 461 pushed through. By May 2024, 12 pilots had achieved full qualification. Maintenance crews reduced average turnaround time from 72 hours to 36 hours. The supply chain established priority channels for critical components. Most importantly, the squadron conducted its first full-scale amphibious assault exercise, lifting 3 JLTV vehicles simultaneously from USS Wasp to a simulated beachhead, a capability the CH-53E could never achieve. June 2024 brought the final evaluation. Naval Air Systems Command inspectors observed Squadron 461 conduct 96 consecutive missions over 2 weeks, including night operations, adverse weather conditions, and maximum payload lifts. The squadron achieved 94% mission success rate with 0 safety incidents. On July 31, 2024, the Secretary of the Navy signed the declaration. Heavy Helicopter Squadron 461 had achieved initial operational capability, but the real test was about to begin. August 2024, Squadron 461 received deployment orders for the Western Pacific. The timing wasn't coincidental. Chinese naval forces had increased activities around Taiwan by 40% since January. People's Liberation Army amphibious assault ships conducted exercises simulating island seizures. Beijing's rhetoric about reunification intensified while U.S. allies in Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines requested increased American military presence. The CH-53K deployment represented more than helicopter modernization. It fundamentally changed U.S. Marine Corps capabilities in the Indo-Pacific theater. The old doctrine required amphibious assault ships to position within 50 miles of contested shores to launch CH-53E operations. This put $3 billion warships within range of Chinese anti-ship missiles and fast attack craft. The vulnerable positioning limited operational flexibility and increased risk to thousands of sailors and Marines. The CH-53K's 460 nautical mile combat radius changed the calculus entirely. Amphibious assault ships could now operate 200-plus miles offshore, beyond effective range of most Chinese coastal defense systems, while still conducting ship-to-shore operations. Marines could seize and hold advanced positions on contested islands, with CH-53Ks ferrying heavy equipment and supplies from carriers positioned in safer waters. The payload capacity created new tactical options. Previous doctrine required multiple CH-53E sorties to move artillery batteries ashore, a time-consuming process that gave adversaries opportunities to detect and disrupt operations. A single CH-53K could lift a complete 155mm howitzer system with crew and ammunition in one insertion, establishing fire support within minutes rather than hours. Pentagon War Games demonstrated the implications. In simulated Taiwan Strait scenarios, Marine units supported by CH-53Ks established defensive positions on offshore islands 60% faster than legacy capabilities allowed. The increased speed and range enabled distributed operations across multiple island chains, complicating Chinese targeting and forcing them to spread defensive resources across wider areas. Chinese military publications acknowledged the threat. People's Liberation Army analyses noted that CH-53K deployment significantly enhances U.S. ability to conduct sustained amphibious operations beyond effective defensive ranges and requires development of extended-range anti-aircraft systems to counter. Beijing accelerated its own heavy-lift helicopter programs in direct response. By October 2024, Squadron 461 conducted exercises with Japanese self-defense forces in Okinawa, South Korean Marines on the peninsula, and Philippine forces in Palawan. Each exercise demonstrated CH-53K capabilities while sending clear messages about American commitment to regional security. Chinese reconnaissance aircraft shadowed every operation, photographing and analyzing the new helicopter's capabilities. The $31 billion investment and 10-year delay suddenly made strategic sense. But Squadron 461 faced an unexpected challenge that would test whether the King Stallion was truly ready for combat operations. November 15th, 2024, 3:20 a.m. Typhoon Mering slammed into the Philippines with 150-mile-per-hour winds, devastating coastal communities and cutting off 8,000 civilians on Catanduanes Island. Roads washed away, the airport flooded, and maritime approaches became impassable. Philippine authorities requested immediate U.S. assistance for mass casualty evacuation before medical supplies ran out. Squadron 461 launched from USS Miguel Keith, positioned 180 miles offshore in heavy seas. The mission would test everything the CH-53K promised. 6 helicopters loaded with medical supplies and rescue equipment faced 40-knot winds, 0 visibility, and landing zones barely large enough for the massive aircraft's footprint. The CH-53E could never have conducted this mission in these conditions at this range. The fly-by-wire controls proved their value immediately. Pilots fought crosswinds that would have made manual flight controls nearly impossible to manage. The digital system compensated for wind shear automatically, maintaining stable hover over pitching decks during shipboard launches. The health monitoring system alerted crews to minor hydraulic pressure fluctuations before they became failures, allowing real-time adjustments. First insertion reached Catanduanes at 5:45 a.m. The lead CH-53K landed in a soccer field surrounded by damaged buildings, rotor wash clearing debris, while Marines established a casualty collection point. Over the next 14 hours, Squadron 461 flew 43 missions, evacuating 327 critically injured civilians and delivering 18 tons of medical supplies, water purification equipment, and emergency generators. One mission became legendary within the squadron. Captain Maria Rodriguez piloted a CH-53K carrying 55 evacuees, the absolute maximum capacity, when engine number 2 experienced temporary power loss at 4,000 feet. The remaining 2 engines automatically increased output while flight computers adjusted blade angles to maintain lift. Rodriguez landed safely at the ship with all evacuees unharmed. A CH-53E with similar failure would have likely crashed. The numbers validated everything. 43 missions, 327 lives saved, 0 mechanical failures requiring mission abort, 94% aircraft availability throughout the operation. Squadron 461 accomplished in 14 hours what would have required 3 days with CH-53ES, if possible at all in those conditions. Filipino officials publicly thanked the U.S. response. Regional media covered the operation extensively. Chinese state media remained conspicuously silent, while their propaganda typically criticizes American military activities. Beijing understood the strategic message. The CH-53K works, it's operational, and it changes the Indo-Pacific military balance. By December 2024, 3 more Marine squadrons began CH-53K transition training. The $138 million helicopter that took 10 years longer than planned finally proved it was worth every delay and every dollar. The King Stallion wasn't just operational, it was rewriting the rules of amphibious warfare while America's competitors scrambled to respond. 10 years late, $6 billion over budget, endless criticism from Congress and defense analysts who called it a boondoggle. But on that typhoon-lashed morning in November 2024, Squadron 461 proved something critics couldn't measure in spreadsheets. Capability matters more than timelines when lives hang in the balance. The 200 CH-53K King Stallions entering service through 2035 represent more than helicopter replacements. They're the backbone of American amphibious power projection. In an era where China challenges every maritime boundary and contested islands could spark the next major conflict. The Marines who flew CH-53Es for decades finally have the platform they deserved, one that won't break down, can actually lift what it promises, and brings them home alive. Was it worth the wait? Ask the 327 Filipinos who didn't die waiting for rescue. Hit subscribe for more military tech deep dives that reveal what really happens when billion-dollar weapons programs meet real-world combat. Next video, why the Air Force is panic buying a 1950s bomber design in 2025. Drop a comment. Was the CH-53K delay justified, or should heads have rolled?